So, see this guy right here? He's not wearing a mask, and he looks so happy. Look at him watering the flowers. He looks great. I don't want him to know that I'm recording him, but look at that. He is enjoying the sunshine. He's not wearing a mask. He's just doing his job, watering the flowers, watering the plants. Look how pretty that is. See all these great gardeners downtown who don't wear masks? Maybe they have an idea that just like the flowers need sunshine and fresh air, so do people. He's great. Okay, just very quickly, I wanted to give you an example of what a privatization of a public space looks like. So as you can see, I'm in this wide open space. It's called Point State Park. That's downtown Pittsburgh. My house is like 15 minutes away. It's like a 15-minute bus ride from my house to where I'm standing right here. And that's, I think it's called like Point State Park Fountain. But this is new. This barricading off of this space here. This is new. Right here around this area. So let me just slowly pan over the barricades, this metal fencing that's up. I've never seen anything like this before. And I see no reason for it to be here. There's no indication that this tree right here is suffering from tree rot or it has some kind of disease, which I think I'm not a horticulturist, but I think I would recognize if there was something wrong with the tree that it would need to be barricaded off, possibly uprooted. Now it's saying danger, keep out, right here on this sign, but I don't know what that's about. Let's see if we can get closer. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, Bureau of State Parks. So they are saying danger, keep out, but I see no evidence of danger. What else is dangerous to you that you see constant signs everywhere you go where they're saying danger, danger, but you see no evidence of the danger? In fact, you see just the opposite. I'll just go ahead and let you ponder that for a minute. But maybe what's happening with this particular space here is that it's been portioned off for maybe private events. Maybe there's a private July 4th party happening and only the managerial class are allowed to attend it. This is a big, wide, open space right outside of downtown Pittsburgh, as you can see. Well, it's in downtown Pittsburgh. It's, a 5-minute walk from any downtown building. Typically, at this time during the week, so it's Thursday, July 2nd, and it's probably about noon. Typically, this place would be packed with people, and everybody would be walking along like I'm walking now, and they'd be heading towards the fountain to cool off and have their lunch, and then they would go back to their offices. So that's normal. This right here, this emptiness, this empty open space where you barely see anybody, it's like a ghost town. This is not normal, and neither is telling you that they had to portion off this part of the park. It's a pretty big space. By saying danger, keep out, by order of the Parks Conservation and Natural Resources, the Bureau of State Parks is what the sign says. But again, I just want to ask you, is it possible that there might be something else going on in this area? Maybe in a couple of days, maybe right around the 4th of July, we will see white linen tables and, tablecloths and people clinking champagne glasses. Because I know that oftentimes when you're in a public space in San Francisco, which has a billionaire every 80 blocks, you would come across something like this. It would say, danger, keep out. Well, really what it is they're just preparing for an event for the managerial class to reward them for taking part and pushing us into corporate fascism. What? What in the world? I'll let you guys come to your own conclusion about this. In case you can't tell, this is supposed to be a drinking fountain. So here we are, 2 days before Independence Day, in the state where the United States Constitution was penned. And this is one of the 3 rivers that hits Pittsburgh. Now, I know that the United States Constitution was actually penned in Philadelphia, but this is Pittsburgh, with all of its great bridges and everything. So it's about this time of year, I would imagine. Now, I'm not from here, and I've not even been here 2 years yet, but I would imagine that about this time of year, just around Independence Day, you would see a lot of sailboats. You would see these kind of like floating party boats, where people would get on the boat and maybe have some food and drinks. Even on a Thursday afternoon, you would see that. But look at it's like dead, calm waters. It's a gorgeous day, not a cloud in the sky. It's a perfect day to get together with friends, get out on your sailboat, maybe get out on one of those party boats. If you have a little bit of extra cash, I think it's like $40 a person, and if you get enough people together, you can rent one of those boats and do that, if that's your thing. 2 days before the 4th of July. So I think this tells you all you need to know. The first thing I want to do is thank each and every one of you for sharing our work and supporting our channel, especially to David Whitehead of Truth Warrior. That was such a great conversation. It didn't really feel like an interview. It just felt like some old friends chatting. So I'm really happy that we had the opportunity to meet with him and learn about him, and that he had a chance to discover our work as well. We are creatives who try to take a artistic and creative look at what's going on in the world right now and present it back to you in ways that will hopefully help you feel better, and hopefully every time you have an opportunity to look at our videos that you would come away knowing that you just had a very unique experience. I wanted to just talk about a few things. I think the first thing that I want to address is some questions that came up recently, which are legitimate questions, and I feel really confident in answering them. At least one question in particular, which is, so are you guys now Republicans? Now that we're sharing Senator Doug Mastriano's work and fireside chats, and we made this video of him speaking to his general audience, and that video has I think about 160,000 views on our channel, which is kind of amazing. No, in answer to your question, no, we're not Republicans, but we do recognize allies when we see them, and Senator Mastriano has been very clear and very transparent about the treason and the tyranny that's taking place in Pennsylvania right now. So we agree with that, so we found a bit of an ally in that sense. And this is something that we learned from somebody that we follow on Twitter, and somebody that we read quite often, Winter Oak, came out with a really great article that said you might find yourself in these really strange upside down times. You might find yourself allied with people that you would normally not, ally with, because, JP and I are independent, so considered, at one point leftist before it became a bad word. but we were more interested in, sort of calling out the hypocrisy that we see in certain areas of the government. Not all areas, and we're not against the government either. We're just against the corporate takeover of the government. So that's something that we've called out for years. And so when this whole thing happened with lockdowns and dangerous mask orders and the shaming of society that tends to think things through, we diagnosed this years ago. So we were prepared when this finally did happen, which was around mid-March for us. So the thing that, the next thing I wanted to bring up was, there's a really great podcaster. She goes by Amazing Polly. And she gave a great breakdown of Amnesty International's definition of torture. So thank you for doing that, because now I don't need to. She has a huge channel, very, very popular. JP and I are just, we're just a couple of creatives trying to reinterpret what's happening in society. So somebody like her is very good at research and very good at what she does. And so kudos to her. I bow my head to her and say, go ahead and do that, because that means I don't have to. But I think we're all very much aware right now that what we're experiencing is, tantamount to torture. And all you have to do is look at some of the way that the military treats its captors, when the military captures, the enemy or the terrorist, and some of the mechanisms by which they break them down psychologically, emotionally, physically, are some of the same tactics, if not all the same tactics, that we are currently experiencing. So we're all aware that this is torture. But one thing I did want to correct Polly on, which, I don't usually correct other podcasters. It's not really my, I feel like we're kind of all in this together, and I'm so appreciative of the work that other podcasters produce. But one thing that I wanted to correct her on was at the very end of her torture definition, at the very end of it, she said that it was collectivism that was sort of behind this whole despotic, tyrannical torture mechanisms. And it's not collectivism, because collectivism has its roots in socialism, and socialism is good. Socialism is where, poor people have access to, education and food and safe housing and medicine and healthcare, and have opportunities. Socialism is that. Now, in the wrong hands, of course, socialism could be twisted into something that is no longer socialism. That would be neoliberalism or capitalism or what have you. But what we're witnessing right now is something called communitarianism. It's the philosophy by which all of these things are happening. And our next video, which we will be releasing to the public tomorrow, is 45 minutes, and we've spent a lot of time researching communitarianism. Communitarianism has its foundation in neoliberalism and corporate fascism. So that's what we're experiencing right now. We're experiencing a sort of ugly version of neoliberalism and corporate fascism. It's called communitarianism. And rather than just go on and on and on about what that means, I would just encourage you to go to our Patreon page and take a look at it. You can subscribe for $2 a month. My camera is wiggling. You can subscribe for as little as $2 a month, and you can have access to all of our work before the public does. Or you can just wait till tomorrow and we'll release it to the public for free. So I did want to mention that, though. I wanted to mention those two things. No, we're not Republicans. We're creatives. We're considered independent. But we recognize allies when we see them. And it's not collectivism that's causing all this trouble. It's communitarianism. Okay, so there's that. Another thing that I wanted to talk about, which is a little more nuanced, and hopefully you guys can kind of follow me along here, the people that, we are calling out, the Bill Gateses of the world, the Mark Zuckerbergs, all of these people that are sort of, behind the tech and behind the treachery, let's call it. These are people that they are like untouchable. They live in airplanes. They live on their private islands. They have multiple homes and multiple domiciles. And they're not on the internet. They're not paying attention to you. They will come out and, tell you to wear a mask because that's a pre-recorded message or a picture that was taken a long time ago that's been uploaded to their Facebook page. Or they might say something really creepy, like Bill and Melinda Gates were on a show, and I guess they said something like, oh, you just wait till the second round, and then they both started laughing. Well, they did that because they knew that you would pounce on it and that you would break it apart and you would obsess over it. The fact is that they're not paying attention to you. They're not on the internet. They're living, in their private jets and in their private life, making, going to their meetings, traveling all over the world. They're living a completely different life than you or me. But, there are people that you can focus on, and you can find out their addresses, and you can find out their phone numbers. You can find out, everything about them. And they're what's called the managerial class. They're much more attainable, and you can actually make a difference by kind of going after them. You can start, any place that forces you to do something against your constitutional protections or against your health protections. You can shame them on social media. You can go to social media. You can also file charges against managers of stores that become abusive. They're easy. You can easily find out their names, and you can file charges against them. I mean, so these are the things that you do to make a difference. And I know it's scary, and I know it's out of your comfort zone, because it's much easier to go after the billionaire class that live in airplanes and private islands. It's much easier to go after them. It's harder to go after somebody who's being fascistic about whether you can go into a store and wear a mask or not. It's harder to go after people like that because you relate to them, because you're part of that class. You don't want anyone to ultimately you don't want anyone to lose their job, for sure. But I think that at this point, some people need to be made an example of. Like, it's time to really, you can go after Bezos all you want and his, horrible practices with Whole Foods and Amazon and all that, but that's not going to make a difference. What's going to make a difference is if you go after the manager of your local Whole Foods. You know what I'm saying? Because there you have their name, you have their phone number, you know where they work, you can easily find out where they live. You can go to your local sheriff and you can say that this person violated my constitutional protections, put my child and myself in harm's way. You can do that with the Costco people that are acting particularly fascistic, I noticed. So you can do all those things. You can go after the people that are, that have taken up this very authoritarian mantle, which I find really just kind of bizarre, and the only thing I can say is that maybe what's happened is they have, they've gone through the indoctrination, they've gone through the training, and so they've emerged this incredibly enlightened person that feels that they know what's best for you. And so, the thing about living in a democracy and living in an open society and not a closed society is that we all have choice. It's like our recent connection with a Republican senator. I am not a Christian. Well, I guess you could say I'm like kind of officially a Christian in that I'm an American and most people are, but I don't end my podcast with a prayer like he does. But I don't fault him for that. I don't look down on him for that. That's his choice. And that's the beauty of living in an open democracy, is that you do have choice. And I'm finding that these managers of these stores, of Costco and these various stores that are forcing you to do things that are harmful to your health, they're taking away your choice and they're taking away your autonomy. And they don't really have the power to do that unless you give it to them. And one of the ways that you can not give it to them and not make them feel empowered is you could file charges against them for, for whatever. You could file charges against the store. I know that there are 30 plus lawsuits. So there's a class action lawsuit against the corporate grocery store that's here in Pennsylvania. So these are the kind of things that we're going to have to start doing as a society if we want to maintain an open democracy. And we're not just doing it for us, but we're also doing it for the people that are abusing us, So we have to think in terms of that. We have to start going after, especially on social media, which is a great place to air our complaints against these draconian measures. Yesterday, I was live on Facebook for about 10 minutes, and I did a black screen because I was in the middle of doing housework. And also, I don't particularly like to show a lot of emotion on a live stream or on a podcast. And what I did was I talked about the recent so-called passage of the mask law here in Pennsylvania. It's not a law. It's very clear. Many senators have already spoken up and said, this is not a law. This is a suggestion. Just because there's a really slick marketing campaign and there's a really well-made poster, and just because everybody, around you might be masking up, doesn't mean that it's a law. And I would say that if an individual approaches you and says you need to wear a mask, don't engage, because you're not going to be able to reason with somebody who's been indoctrinated or brainwashed and who doesn't understand the legislative process. I would just say, what I usually do is just say, oh, it's in the bottom of my bag somewhere. Thank you for reminding me. It's such a beautiful day today. The birds are chirping. The air is so clean. I've been sheltering in place for 4 months now, and this is like maybe the second time I've been outside. And if you start to reach to their empathy places, because they're in there somewhere, and if you start to do that, then those confrontational videos that we see all over Facebook and all over social media will become less and less. Instead, we'll be seeing people thanking each other for their concern, and we'll get back to a polite society, because that's the whole point of all of this, is to turn us into savages and be really impolite towards each other, which I think is ridiculous. So that's what I say. That's what I do with people who might say, you're supposed to wear a mask, it's a law. I might say, oh, is it? Oh, you know what? It's in the bottom of my bag. I totally forgot. It's such a beautiful day, and just kind of, be chill about it. Another thing too that I notice a lot, and I've mentioned this before, is we're dealing with something that's very irrational. We're dealing with something that comes out of torture techniques, as we know. As we've all discovered, and we know it's coming out of torture techniques. And there's always an element of a chaos with torture. You're locked down. No, you're open. No, you're locked down. No, you're open. No, it's no mask. Oh, you have to wear a mask. Like the laws keep changing, the rules keep changing, the suggestions keep changing. You don't know what's up. You're starting to really just kind of lose a sense of yourself. That's you being tortured. That's psychological warfare. It's psychological torture. I know that where I live in Pittsburgh, it's been 1 month of professional grade fireworks and fire bombs that you would typically find at a carnival right over my house for an entire month. That's a torture technique. That's meant to drive you crazy. It's the same thing that they were doing at Guantanamo Bay, where they were playing, heavy metal songs over and over for, 27 hours a day, every day, to torture these prisoners to admit to things that they didn't do. Well, that's the same thing with the month long of fireworks and stuff. Professional and commercial grade fireworks that nobody in my neighborhood can afford. All right, so this is an outside source that's coming in and doing this. So I would say that because we're dealing with all this chaos and we're dealing with irrationality, it's, we have to respond irrationally. We have to respond in the way that we are being spoken to. And so, one of the things that I always carry with me, and I've carried with me my whole life, I think, is this idea that as human beings, it really doesn't matter like what we say or what we do. What really truly matters is how we respond to what is being said to us and what is being done to us. That's the thing that really drives my life, which is why I respond to everything happening right now. I respond creatively on my creative platform with my husband. We use music and art to respond to these terrible injustices and these terrible torture techniques that are happening and just, really hurting us in the long run. So, how you respond to a situation is what matters. Your response to it is what really counts. So if someone is being irrational to you, and these irrational messages are being, you're being pelted with irrational messages, either through social media or even just like on the bus or in the train station downtown here. There's an irrational, very, very well-made poster that says, "Stay safe, wear a mask." That's irrational. That is not a rational message. So my response to that will be not something rational that's based in science or based in fact, because their message to me isn't based in science or based in fact. So my response to them would be something gibberishy and irrational back to them. And it really just, what it does is it just completely fucks with people, especially on social media. How many times has JP, who wears a mask wherever he goes, he's been sheltering in place for 4 months. He barely goes anywhere. And just because he might put an article that goes against the mask narrative, somebody will say, "How dare you? You want to kill 120,000 more people?" And it's like, lady, you don't know anything about him. You don't know that he wears a mask everywhere he goes. You don't know that I have suffered from hypoxia one time from having to wear a mask. You don't know the dangers to our lives that sheltering in place and wearing a mask has done to us on a very personal level. And so instead of getting rational in response to her irrational accusation, I just jump in and say, well, you want to just, murder children and kill all the people that work at grocery stores who are forced to wear masks 8 hours a day. I've seen those people fall down and get concussed and have to be taken to the hospital. And then when the ambulance came, they didn't know what to do because we have a terrible healthcare system. And then the children were crying. And then, oh my God. And see what I did? I just spun it out into a completely different narrative. That the person is like, "Whoa, I'm not like that. I don't want children to die and our medical care system to be failing people who need it," and suddenly they're on the defensive and they're in a completely different headspace. So the first person I noticed in the media that was lifted up as this person who was able to respond irrationally to some accusations against her, believe it or not, I know this might actually get this video deleted, so cross your fingers that YT doesn't take it down, right? So the first person I noticed in media, and I think this was done on purpose, because right after it I noticed a complete change in dialogue about the human experience, was this woman by the name of Casey Anthony. So Casey Anthony was accused of murdering her little girl. Now, whether you believe the story is real or not, or whether you believe she was innocent or not, or whether she was guilty or not, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about her response to the accusation. She was accused of being a murderer, okay? And when she was questioned by the prosecution about her whereabouts on the day that her child was either discovered or went missing, I forget. It's been like 12, 15 years since this case was all over mainstream media, if you recall. Her response was something like this. Well, I was on my way to daycare, but then I had to stop and fill out an application at Disney World, and then I went and got a smoothie, and then I had to go pick up some toilet paper over at the Dollar General, and then I had to stop off and, oh, but wait, no, my application for Disney was the day before. But you know what? I think that I dropped her off at the daycare with her daycare person on that day, but then on a different day it was a different person because that daycare person had to call off. So, you see what I'm saying? See how she did it? And I watched the way that this thing played out, and I was like, okay, so her gibberishy, narcissistic, like pathological bullshit is basically what got her off. Like, is basically why she is not rotting in jail right now, is because the jury was so exhausted with her spinning lies and she just was all over the place. That she didn't even go to jail for committing murder. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that there's a lesson there. And so right after that story went public, on mainstream press, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this must have been like 15 years ago, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you saw podcasters coming out of the woodwork talking about narcissistic personality disorders, psychopathy, or gaslighting techniques, or what's some of the other things, scapegoating. You know, whole societies of people have been scapegoated by narcissists, and all of these different syndromes that sort of come out of a collapsed society. Because, you know, nothing really good comes out of fascism, right? So I thought that was a really interesting way to look at so when someone is accusing you of something that isn't true, you do not want to cause the world harm. You just don't. But you are diagnosing the situation as it is, and it's critical. It's a very critical situation. We're looking at a collapsed society that has collapsed. We're looking at, poverty. We're looking at, campaigns to accuse people of things that aren't true. We're looking at corporate merging with governance. That's, the global governance, things that are coming out of the World Economic Forum. And a lot of us are having a hard time sort of psychologically dealing with it. That's because it's based in irrationality. So you have, all of these different things being told you, like, we're in this together, let's stay together. What is the term? Hashtag stay together, or together, something about together. And how it's like, look, this is for your health. Okay, this is for your health, this is for your benefit. We're really trying to make sure everybody's safe. So if it was for our health and for our benefit, then why do I have to stand out, in front of Trader Joe's under the hot blazing sun or the freezing cold without any kind of shelter? Like, where's your health stay together? Like, we care about society. You see what I'm saying? So there's a real disconnect with what's being said and what's being done. And that's a classic torture technique. That's a classic that's a classic narcissistic technique. That's classic fascism. Oh, it's for your own good. We're doing this for your own good, and meanwhile, you're getting hurt just for wanting to live your life. So, I think those are things that we have to think about, and we have to remember that the philosophy that is based on all of this comes out of philosophy of neoliberalism and corporate fascism. And so when you've got a merging of, you know, corporations that merge with government, that's considered, you know, corporate fascism. And, some people are thriving really well. I mean, I know a lot of people who have been able to travel and, go to their villa in Italy to, during the lockdown in America, so they've been fine. Some people do really well in fascism. That's usually the managerial class. And then other people haven't. Other people have really struggled. They've lost their income. It's bad. So I think that what we want to do is try to, respond appropriately to, to the situation at hand. It's an irrational demand. These are irrational demands. So you don't want to respond rationally to something that's so irrational. You want to respond with, you want to get them off track a little bit. You want to make sure that they can start to see the reflection of themselves and what's really happening, because then you just get into these little battles that don't go anywhere, and you end up exhausting all of this energy for nothing. But I think that's some of the things I wanted to talk about today. And, of course, I want to just give a shout out to all of our supporters. There's too many of you to name. Those of you who have found us through social media and just out there in the universe, thank you for your support and your kindness and your friendship. This thing can be, it can be addressed and it can be fixed, but it's going to take, small groups. We're talking like 5 or 6 people in your living room to have a conversation. Maybe a documentary party, maybe going back and looking at history. One of the things that I did want to mention, which I feel is really important, recently there was a Black Lives Matter protest in my neighborhood, and I didn't go because I know what's behind Black Lives Matter. I know that it's funded by Facebook and Target and Home Depot and Google and your taxes and my taxes and IKEA and, anything that has so much corporate backing and corporate funding. And yet I look around and I don't see the people that it should benefit the most. I don't see it benefiting them. I realize it's not a legitimate grassroots movement. What was a legitimate grassroots protest or movement was at the very beginning of this thing, when the people in Michigan got together and they protested the lockdown in their cars. That was legitimate. That was not corporate backed. That was not sponsored by your taxes. But one thing that I did notice in my neighborhood, which is a largely Black population in my neighborhood, is that the day of the protest, I saw one little video that somebody put out. It was mostly white people. And all the people in my neighborhood, which is predominantly Black, gone. It was a ghost town. They split. They didn't want to be anywhere near it. And I found that message right there so poignant and so profound, because they knew something bad was coming. They were warned about it. They didn't want to be a part of it. They didn't want to be blamed for any acts of violence or any acts of, the defamation of buildings. They did not want to be scapegoated yet again. They did not want to be anywhere near it. They split. They were gone. It was like you could hear a pin drop on my street. That's how quiet it was. They were nowhere near it. They took off. I don't know where they went, but they were gone. And so that message right there was really profound to me, because we've all been diagnosing this thing from the very beginning, haven't we? We know what's about ready to happen. We know what's about ready to go down, and we know that it's an incremental, slow process of the continued erosion of our rights and our freedoms. But let's take a lesson from my neighbors. Let's not be around when it happens. And so I mean in your head, sometimes in your head and your heart. Go to the places that will keep you safe. Go to those great spaces in your head and in your heart that keep you safe and keep you happy and keep you functioning in the midst of all this craziness and all this psychosis. Because if you keep putting yourself back into it, you will be scapegoated. You know what I mean? If you keep putting yourself back into it, you'll be a victim to it. And I think that that's one thing that we can learn. That was my takeaway from the protests that happened in my own neighborhood just a few days ago. That was my takeaway from it. It's, these people split. They were nowhere to be found. They did not want to be scapegoated. They didn't want to be around when the shit hit the fan. And that's kind of how we have to do it. We're going to let go. We're going to let go of this idea that we'll lose all of our liberties and all of our freedom and all of our humanity. We're going to let go of this idea that we're going to lose that. You're not going to lose it. You're not going to lose it. You're just going to exist as if it doesn't exist. And I think that should be the takeaway. Okay, so thank you for joining me today. It's been really great. I got some great footage of, the area where I live, so you guys can see a little bit of where I live. Hopefully you heard the birds chirping in the background. Have a great day, and we will be releasing our new video that we finished last week. We'll be releasing it to the public tomorrow on July 3rd, JP's birthday. So if you feel like donating, you can go to paypal.me/bookofhours, and you can make a small $5 donation. Or whatever amount you want. If you feel like becoming a patron of the arts and you want to support our artwork and our continued video essays, you can go to patreon.com/bookofhours, and you can do that. That would be immensely helpful. We nearly reached our YouTube goal. We're looking to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of the week, and we are just like, I think we're just like 60, 70 away from that. So that's amazing. So thank you for that. That's because of you sharing our videos. And we haven't yet made our goal. We wanted 20 Patreons by Friday, July 3rd, which is tomorrow. We have 11. So tell your friends, hey, $2 a month, that's only $24 a year. You can support these artists over here in Pittsburgh. Okay? Thanks, guys. Talk to you later. Bye. Hey guys, it's a beautiful day, and it would be a shame for you to miss out on all of this wonderful, clean, fresh air and beautiful sunshine if you were covering up your face and your nose with a constricting mask that causes hypoxia and causes your lungs to collapse and makes you dizzy and gives you headaches. I'm so thankful for this really great fountain that I'm sitting in front of. It's really nice to see the fountains running again. It's such a beautiful, nice, lovely summer day. The trees are all green and everything's so fresh and wonderful. It'd be a shame if you missed out on that. It'd be a shame if you were wearing a mask and didn't let your body breathe in the fresh, clean air. Book of Hours is determined to remain an essential platform that offers a creative interpretation for lockdown skeptics and experts who have been censored by mainstream press. Thanks to your donations, we can carry on doing this essential work as working artists. These big issues of the day are vital and need to be heard. So please share our videos, subscribe to our YouTube channel, make a one-time donation on our PayPal page, but most importantly, please be a part of our team on our Patreon page. Go to patreon.com/bookofhours and hit the blue button titled Become a Patron. Thank you.